Alright YouTube, so we're going to try out this live streaming service that I'm playing with and want to go over some things today with you guys. So we're going to give this a minute or so I can kind of see what's going on, see if the video comes up on my phone so that I can see that we are live. Looks like it is. Looks like there's probably a 5 to 10 second delay, so hopefully you guys can communicate with me pretty well, but I'm going to let some people get on here. It's a Saturday afternoon. We're all in quarantine, I'm sure. Well, I don't know about all of us, but we have a soft quarantine where I'm at. So it's not like we can't go around, but this is the first time I've tried live streaming off my desktop screen. So I'm going to try to do my best here to act like I know what I'm doing, but of course it's our first time. But it looks like we're getting comments coming in. So everyone is seeing what's going on. That's awesome. How's it going, everyone? So you guys can see my screen. This is my desktop. I guess we were going to go over some things just because I wanted to try out this live stream thing, and maybe we can, go over enclosure design and all that. If some of you are curious, I'm not the world's greatest expert on every enclosure ever, but I have built several that are, they perform well, and you guys see the YouTube channel. And it's really quite simple, but you have to have the mind for it. You gotta kind of understand math a little bit. So if you're not familiar with working with numbers, or I don't know how I want to phrase this, but it does help to have like a physical sense of what numbers are doing too, because you got to build something in the real world. And so that's kind of what goes in the box. And enclosure design is just making it work on paper, but also making it work in real life. So it looks like we're getting more comments. So I'm going to try my best to keep up with you guys' comments and try to keep to the topic. And hopefully we get some viewership. Got a few watching right now, and we got the third ERA said, "What's up, man? Got our large t-shirts." Yeah, we got the t-shirts in stock. If you guys want t-shirts, you can go to my website, jeepandbase.com, and we got tons of them. Appreciate it, man. So let's see what we got going on. So we got some people watching. That's cool. Craig Jacobson's watching, so he's got the t-shirts at his place, and he'll handle the shipping whenever I send him orders. So yeah, we got those going. But yeah, so let's get on with something. I'll try to keep up with the comments, and we'll just move along here. But I guess what I wanted to do is design some sort of an enclosure with you guys watching and kind of show you how I do it. I do provide like enclosure designs on my website. So I'll show you an example. So this is probably not the best example. Let's do something. There's one I did for my buddy Shane. Let's see. No, that's not a good example. This one. Sorry, guys. I was not prepared. So, let's see. This one might be good. All right. Here we go. So, this is one I did for a guy, Chris. And it's for his 2 DC level 6 18s. And these are the plans that you'd get from me if I were to sit down and actually put some time and design something for you. So you get like a nice PDF that has a cover on it showing you kind of the overview and look at the box, and then I would give some specs on the box, an overview, some details concerning where the speakers would be mounted, and then what I do is the next step beyond is do these build steps, and I don't know of anyone who else does that and provides that in their enclosure design services, but step it through and be like, okay, you do this and then this, and I also include sizes, and then there's a cut sheet, for as many as you need, and that's all laid out on here, and then of course I thank you for your order at the end. But so that's an example of something I would put together if someone ordered a design on the website or just emailed me and wanted to get something done. So just letting you guys know, that's kind of a thing that I've been doing during the quarantine. Still, my turnaround time is like a week to 2 weeks because I am working full time still. and trying to get projects done at the house and all that. But so that's something that you could get as an end product of kind of what I work with here. I primarily stick with ported enclosures because I'm very familiar with them and I've played with them a lot, and I don't use any fancy software. I'm using this Torres tuning calculator. I've been using this for years, and I find it to be pretty dang accurate for everything I've done. And I don't have a download link, but I could get that included later on. Or if you guys Googled it, I'm sure you could find it. But it's a nice little piece of software. It's free. And the next thing I like to use is Trimble SketchUp. So it's a 3D modeling software. It's also free if you can find that version online. It's kind of tricky. They made it a little harder to find these bits of software, I found, but eventually if you do enough searching you'll end up coming across it and you can get the download, and it works on Windows and everything. So yeah, between those two bits of software I design pretty much everything that I do, and it works. You guys seen it work. So let me look at some comments here and make sure we're keeping up. Everyone's just saying hi and what's up. So Craig Jacobson wants a wall for 1212s. Well, you're just in luck, because that is what I'm doing. So you guys should be excited because the Astrovan is going through changes, and Craig is here watching with us. But this is the model that I put together, and it's very messy right now because we do lots of testing. This is for the Astrovan. This is the 418s build, and this is how I have it modeled. So this is basically the steel cage and enclosure. And we went through last season really struggling with equipment failure and just the learning curve of building such a high-end SPL system. And with all the things happening in the world and the changes DB Drag, the competition organization, are making, we decided we're not really as into chasing numbers as we originally wanted to be. We got it up to 168s. It's just pretty loud, but we wanted to break a 70, and financially and time, it just didn't want to happen. So we're changing our mind and changing our route to something more fun. I think you guys would probably enjoy more on the channel, is an actual demo build. So this is something I'm putting together for Craig, and I got to do a lot of brainstorming on making this work, but what we're looking at is our enclosure for the 418s being converted into 1212s. So that's kind of a preliminary layout of how I'd put it together. And then these are all like our other pieces of things I was designing for the 418s. And this would be like the steel baffle right here that I welded up, and we fit everything too. But that's all going away. Craig's already been cutting it out, and it's a pain because we, of course, have to cut through metal and everything. But hopefully you guys think that's cool. You're the this is the first time I mentioned it to anyone on YouTube, so congratulations. You saw a sneak peek of what's going to happen throughout the year. But so yeah, so this is the software. Can do a lot of stuff with it. A lot of these things, if I'm building like this wall, for example, I have access to a CNC machine with Gately Audio. So Bobby Gately in Sacramento, California, he will cut a lot of this stuff for me. So like a lot of these baffles we had cut for the van, and what I'll do is I'll design it in Trimble SketchUp, and then I will take all that design, convert it to a two-dimensional design in AutoCAD, which is software I use for my work and everything. So I have access to Civil 3D and AutoCAD. That software essentially is what the CNC can use to make its cuts and cut our parts out in the real world. So that's that process. But enough of that. Just figured I'd show you guys that. Let's look at something from scratch. But momentarily I'll check up on the comments. I'm going to have a hard time doing this because I'm looking at two screens and there's a lot of comments coming through, so you guys must be enjoying it. But I'll likely have to kind of take more time later. So I'm getting the questions about calculating port areas and all these different things. That's stuff I wanted to show you guys. So we'll go over it. If you guys want to stick around, I'll be here for maybe an hour. We'll see where it goes. We got almost 40 viewers, so that's decent for as little as I upload and do live. So hopefully, if you guys want to go share this right now on social media, that'd be cool. But let's go get on with it. So I guess the design I'm going to work on is for my Jeep, and this will be another surprise to you guys, but I'm not re-walling the Jeep. The Jeep is going back to a more original form, and it's going to be a no-wall build. And well, we'll go into more detail about that as I upload the videos. I've been working on it, and it's kind of where I want to go with the build. I'd rather get a different vehicle, I guess, at some point to do a big wall build, and I have some other priorities going on. So I decided I'm downsizing the Jeep, and we'll talk about that more later, don't worry. But let's go on and start with the design. So I went out to my Jeep. I actually have a parts Jeep that I use to get my measurements because it has a full interior. Mine doesn't quite have the interior yet. But I got those measurements out of that, and I've got a layout in my head of how I want to do it. I know where I'm putting my amplifiers, I know where I'm putting my battery, and I'm ready to do a preliminary design. So getting Torres, the box calculator software, it's what I primarily use because it works and it's simple. I'm going to go ahead and design the enclosure for 312s. I'm going to do 312s on quite a bit of power. So I guess I should talk about that. If you have a ported enclosure, or pretty much any style enclosure, I guess, the more power you're throwing at a subwoofer, especially if you're overpowering a subwoofer, usually you want to kind of lean to a smaller enclosure so that the subwoofer is able to handle that. A larger enclosure will typically be more efficient, but handle less power overall for the mechanicals of the subwoofer. It's going to have more of a free air effect, if that makes any sense. So obviously you place the speaker out in free air, it's not going to take very much power because the suspension has no real resistance behind it, of being loaded into an enclosure. So I have a ton of power. I'm not looking to use up tons of space in my vehicle because I'm going to put all the seats back in it. So luckily in my situation, I get to have a slightly smaller box than I may go with if I only had like one amplifier. But we're basically putting 15,000 watts to 3 subs. It's going to be insane. So enough of that. Let's get into it. My dimensions will be 42 inches wide. That's my width between the wheel wells in the back of the Jeep. And then I know I have a height after I get amplifiers and everything installed. I have around 18 to 19 inches, give or take, of height that keeps it below the back seat for the most part. That's kind of what I want to do. And then the depth, I have maybe 22 to 24 inches, depending on what I actually need. So I'm going to start with the smaller depth on that. And immediately you see Torres comes up with a volume down here. That's a net volume of the enclosure with nothing in it. It doesn't know that there's a port. It doesn't know that there's speakers. It just sees that it's a box made out of 3/4 inch wood, 6-sided enclosure. That's what you'll start with, and 7 cubes is a little small for my 312s after I get my port put in there, because that port's going to take up room. But we'll keep playing with it, and we'll get it there. I'm going to do 1.5 inch material, likely all the way around the box. So it'll be doubled up 3/4. And now you see the volume has gone down some more. So I'm getting to where, like, alright, this box is getting to where it would be nice to make it a little bigger, but I'm going to continue trying to design it and remember that I do have a little bit more power than I need. So if it ends up being a little small, it's going to be okay in the long run for me. If you guys, came to me with the same idea, 312s, but I only have a 1500 watt amp, I want to be as loud as I can. The 12s are rated 1,000 watts a piece. Then I'd be like, well, as long as you're not clipping them, you are safe to have a larger box and run that smaller amp and still have some good output. Getting some water here. So since I'm not worried about that, I'm just going to keep pushing through. So I like to do a side port, or like it's a back-facing port, subs facing up, but the port is off to one side. Um, so in this software, you have to kind of describe that. And when I draw this out in CAD, you guys will see it. But what the software needs to know is the common number of port walls. So that is what of the speaker enclosure does the port share? Like the left panel of the speaker enclosure is actually a part of the port, or is the port like on its own, kind of like a like a vented, like a round port, like an arrow port? That's kind of standalone because it doesn't share any of the enclosure. It encloses itself without the aid of the enclosure. And if you guys don't understand what I'm saying, I'll draw it out here in a moment and really show you. But in my example, I need to tell it three are shared because I'm going to be sharing the portion of the top of the enclosure, a portion of the bottom, and a portion of the side will help make up the perimeter of the enclosure opening. So once that's established, that's great. Next thing I usually like to do is know what woofer I'm using. So I'm using the JVF 12, the 3.312, and I don't exactly know their displacement off the top of my head. So what I can do is I look up similar speakers. Sometimes if I don't quite know the exact volume that the speaker displaces when it's in an enclosure. And if you're looking maybe at the DC Audio website is one I use, that his sub is very close to what a XL would be. So I'm going to say his sub is about 0.2 cubic foot of displacement. That's the volume of air that subwoofer will take up when you put it in the box. So you got to account for that. So I'm going to go with 0.2. Say his are slightly larger than the DC XL. That's like the size of the motor and all the displacement of the basket and everything that has to do with the speaker. I have three of them, so I'm going to make it 0.6 cubic feet of displacement taken out of my box now. So again, my volume has shrunk some more, which I don't like because I think my goal is to have around 2 cubic foot per speaker. And obviously 5.83 divided by 3 is less than 2. So it's becoming a little small. But we're going to keep going with it, and that's when I'm going to start adjusting. Maybe since I see that, maybe I'll think, you know what, let me add an inch to the height and see where we're at. Okay, we're back above 6, but it's not a lot. So this box might have to be a little deeper. So I'm going to really try to maximize my space in here, and now we're back up to about 7 cubic foot. So that's something maybe I can start working with and go from there. So once I kind of feel comfortable with the volume of the enclosure, then I move on to the port. So if I have a box that's 19 inches high, I'll grab my calculator and think about the thicknesses of my wood. If I have a double layer all the way around, I'm basically if my port is the same height as the inside of the enclosure, then I have to subtract the thickness of my wood from the outside. And we'll draw this in CAD or in this Trimble SketchUp and really show you guys again what I'm talking about if you're not visualizing it. But if I know the height of my port is basically going to be 3 inches less than the height of my enclosure. So we're going to be 19 inches less 3 inches is 16 inches high. And then I'll throw in an arbitrarily picked port width, so let's say 5 inches. And then I'm going to add a length. I usually say like 30 inches. So then now we get some numbers spit out. So we start seeing like what's this box going to do. So we'll look at this and we're below 6 cubic foot, which is a little bit below than I wanted. So now I'm feeling like, okay, I need to make a change somewhere. Either that port is going to be shrunk or I need to make the box larger. So this is a juggling act I start doing. And one thing I pay attention to is the port area per cubic foot. To me, this number says a lot about if your port is big enough or not. Basically, it's like the area of your port versus how many cubic foot your box is, and you want to get this number. Well, 14 is probably fine, but I personally like for a ported enclosure is around 16 inches squared per cubic foot. So that's 16 inches of port area for every cubic foot of box. and I'll have to show you guys once I draw this thing up, but I'm going to keep moving forward. Bear with me until you can actually get the visual, because that's coming. But let's say I want to get that number up a little bit. I'm going to make it a 6-inch wide port, so make the port a little bigger. We jumped up to 18 per cubic foot. That's a pretty big jump because making the port bigger actually took more room out of the box, inversely making this ratio of port area per cubic foot larger. So I'm going to try a 5.5. Okay, we're still a little large, so maybe like a 5.25. So that's decent. So 15 is pretty close to what I like. About 16 is optimal in my mind. I don't usually like to go over 16, so it's probably good. But I notice my box is a little small still. My tuning's in a pretty good spot. I like to tune around 32 to 35 hertz. But with the smaller enclosure, it makes me wonder, like, do I want to go a little bigger even though I have a bunch of power? I don't know. I think if I could, I would slightly. So maybe I'm going to squeeze another inch out of the top of this box. And, now we're getting closer. Now my tuning has gone down. I don't need it that low. And the reason why it went down is because I have a bigger enclosure. And then also my port area per cubic foot went down, which all this stuff you guys can tell is a juggling act. So I'm going to try to help the confusion here by just kind of getting through this really quick and forcing it to work so we can actually draw up this box and really start showing you guys the visual. So let's play with this a little more. Yeah, it's going to be tough with this one. If I do tune it up a little bit by shortening my port length, I do gain some volume back. So it's kind of finding that happy medium, but maybe for now, this might work out because I have a lot of power. So this combination of numbers gets me a 15.5 square inches per cubic foot of port area, which is pretty close to my optimal number. That's not bad. I have close to 6 cubic foot of volume, so that's what I wanted because I have 3 12s at 2 cubic foot per 12 of air requirement. And we're tuned around 33 to 34 hertz, which is a pretty healthy place to be. So I could continue iterating through this and like really fine tuning the numbers until I felt like it was perfect. Real world, you might not really never notice that much difference, depending on your build skills and how well you cut parts of the box. So I think this will be good enough for today's demonstration, and then before I build it, obviously, I'll go through and I'll play with it. So this software gets you in the ballpark really close, very accurate in my opinion, as long as you follow these exact numbers. So the volume has to end up right where it is on this in the real world, and that's where this 3D software comes into play, because now you can actually sit and calculate and visualize the enclosure to make sure that all this stuff translates over into this, because I'll notice sometimes that the port length will have to change slightly, or the box will have to change slightly in dimensions to actually come up with these numbers, because the software can't account for every single enclosure shape in the world. You really have to manipulate your model to kind of make the numbers all work out, and so we'll go through that. So I'm going to move this over to my other screen, and I'm going to check your comments really quick. We'll take a second. So everyone's just chatting up. I would like to take more time to look at these, but I'm trying to keep this moving. Some people are just talking about different stuff. What's up? What's up? All right. So there's some good questions we might have to get to at towards the end. So maybe you guys, if you want to wait towards the end, maybe I'll go through the comments more with detail, and we'll just have to go through them then, because I don't want to like break my train of thought and lose you guys. But there's some good questions like bandwidth and different things. I have theories of that on my own, and generally with these ported boxes, if we go back to this, I feel like the bandwidth has to do with, at least for a ported enclosure, it has to do with the vehicle a lot. Some vehicles are going to promote the bandwidth better than others. Like it's odd. Like Ford Rangers and Toyota Tacomas, little baby trucks, they help a lot with low end bandwidth. Like below 30 hertz stuff. I've seen people get away with like having these really low hitting builds in these trucks. So in like that example, the vehicle itself is kind of helping you. So you can kind of get away with a higher tuning if you want to tune the box to peak a little better. Maybe if the vehicle isn't doing very well in the upper frequency range, then you might move the tuning of the enclosure up a little bit, and then it might make up for it a little bit on its own because the vehicle kind of becomes a part of the enclosure in a way. So you can gain bandwidth by just kind of understanding what your vehicle prefers, which means you may have to build a couple setups and really get a good sense of what the vehicle likes. The other thing would be where you place this tuning frequency in relation to what subwoofer you're using. Like if you have a little baby subwoofer like 8-inch and it doesn't like if you look at specs on subwoofers, like if we go back over to the DC audio, a lot of manufacturers are going to provide you these bit of specs, and one that will stick out is the FS, which is the free air resonance of the speaker. Like what it favors if you just set it there on a table, like what's the loudest frequency that speaker can play. DC claims 38 hertz. I think these are probably taken from subwoofers that haven't been broken in yet. So normally these FS numbers will go down the more you break in a woofer, which means it'll favor lower frequency. That's why some people will be like, well, my lows are getting better the more I break in my woofer. It's because it's naturally wanting to play lower as it softens. But for example, this 12 is kind of high, but it's at 38.5 hertz, so we'll call it 38 hertz FS. I got actually a better example. Let's go with a little baby woofer. A little baby woofer, like a 6.5, has a really high FS. You guys see this is up like 48 hertz. So this woofer doesn't naturally want to play 20 hertz. It's not going to want to do it. If you force the tuning of that enclosure for that little woofer down, below 30 hertz or really far off from the FS, you're gonna have struggles making that woofer perform. So you've lost your bandwidth, and the woofer is just not designed to do that. So a lot of times when you're tuning an enclosure, you're gonna kind of want to make it follow near what the FS of the woofer is. That way you get the most output because it's like a nice synced up combination. But you can take a woofer that's got an FS of like 38 or 40 hertz, for instance, and tune it at like 32, and it'll work out just fine. And you get decent bandwidth. It might not play, below 30 hertz with authority. At some point, it'll start falling off. Whereas if you got like a big 18-inch woofer that's got an FS of like, what is this one? 32. This one naturally plays 32 hertz, and it might even go lower once it's broke in. That woofer is going to have a really much better and easier time of playing down to like 20 hertz, especially when paired with the enclosure tuned down, at 30 hertz or so. You don't want to tune very far away from the FS is what I'm saying a lot of times. But there are combinations of times where you can kind of use that to your advantage. You can set the tuning frequency a little bit lower than you think it should be so that you can gain some of that low-end extension, which increases bandwidth, but you lose some of that efficiency. So I guess in short, what I'm saying is if you tune the box closer to the FS of the woofer, it will typically get louder, but you will have less bandwidth, and the inverse is true. If you tune this kind of far away, but not too far away, you should be able to get a little more bandwidth, but you're going to lose some of that loudness for the most part. I mean, like I said, the vehicle is going to change that, and so many factors. The last bit of knowledge that I would drop on that as far as bandwidth with a ported enclosure is I feel like the port area plays a big part into that bandwidth. And that's why I like these port areas to be kind of high. People would generally be like, well, it's because you don't want port noise, and that is true. But you don't want like the port so obsessively large that it stops working effectively. So I kind of limit myself around 16, but I feel like larger vented, larger ports tend to have better bandwidth. That seems to be something I've noticed. Um, that's why maybe you go get like a prefab enclosure with a small little port on it, and it peaks at one frequency, and it just doesn't sound like it's going to get bandwidth. I feel like it's a theory, and I've played with that, and I found that the larger the part area, the better the bandwidth, as long as you're not going too large and making it to where the enclosure is not working. But enough on that. That's why I said I got to go back to you guys' questions at the end because I get off track. But I'm going to get some water here, and we're going to start drawing my design here. Okay. All right. So, you guys probably saw the numbers already, so I'm just going to put it on the other screen and go from there. But I basically start out with the bottom of the enclosure. I know my design is going to be 42 inches wide and 24 inches deep. Okay, so this is my first piece of my bottom of the box, and I'm not going to really give you guys a tutorial on how to use this on this modeling software. You just follow along, and if you want to end up playing with it, you can download it and learn on your own, but I'll just tell you what I'm doing. So basically I created a 2D surface, and then I made it into a 3D object, and then I'll group it to make a group. So now it's one piece, and it's not going to the software is not going to get confused and think it's a part of something else. So you can view this as a piece of wood, right? And I can even make it look like a piece of wood. This is my bottom piece of my enclosure, and like I said, I'm going to double up the enclosure to make it 1.5 inches thick all the way around. So this is my bottom pieces, and if you get a design from me, this is usually build step 1 is laminate your two pieces together, usually using your screws and glue. And then we're going to go up from there. So I know my overall height to the box is going to be 20 inches, so I'll draw from the bottom, go up 20 inches, and then I'm going to duplicate these pieces because they'll be the same on the top. And I'm going to place them at the 20-inch mark. So now I got my top and bottom of the box, and now I can draw my sides. So I'm going to do the same thickness, so it'll be 3/4 of an inch. And then actually give it some depth here. So there's your side. And then I can copy, I'll make it look like wood. And then I can copy it. We're going to copy it so I can double up my side here. And then we'll give it a left side. Alright, so now we have 4 sides to our enclosure, and this is a good start. At this point, usually I'll take my top and I'll put it somewhere else for now, so I can kind of look down into the box. We're going to draw the back. And again, guys, I'm not paying attention to your comments at the moment. I'm just kind of going through this kind of quickly so we can get our ideas across, and then towards the end I'll try to get through the comments and hopefully answer what I can. But so we'll double this up, and there we go. And then I'll just copy these two and make them my front now as well. So there we go. We have all the sides to our enclosure, and right now it's just an empty box, which is fine. And that's kind of what that initial net volume was on Torres when we were looking at it before I added any port or speaker displacement. So now we got to actually get our port figured out. And if we remember back to here, I said it was 16 inches tall and 15 3/4 wide. So what I mean about how it shares faces with the box was so this segment is 17. Am I too tall? Oh, I think I forgot something in my design here. So you guys remember I changed the height of my design. I forgot to update the height of my port. So I'm actually going to bring that up and then adjust my width, kind of bring it back. Let's see. I don't know. That's close enough. So this is kind of that iteration again. If you change your box height and you want your port to be a part of that box height, then you got to change your port height, which means you got to change your port width so that you can kind of get back to that tuning you were going for. So now we're at like a pretty nice rounded off 34 hertz. But so we are 17 inches tall and 5.5 wide. And I'll show you really quick visually how that goes. So if I move this 5.5 inches, now you guys can start seeing that's starting to look like a ported enclosure. So this dimension here to the bottom is 17 inches tall. So that's my height of my port, and then obviously my width is 5.5 like I just did. And if we plop our top pieces back on, we have a ported box, sort of, with no depth to the port. But you can see what I was talking about earlier when I was in Torres. You got to tell it these things, but this number is very important because it's not going to know how to calculate the port without knowing this number. The number of common port walls. I talked about it earlier. That's the number of walls that the port can share with the enclosure. And if you look here, it's 3 because you see this bottom is a part of this port, this side is a part of this port, and this top is a part of the port. Those, let's see, if I take this off, you know that obviously the fourth side of the port, this right side, is going to be a piece that kind of sticks into the box. That is not a part of the sides of the box, so it can't be counted as a shared piece of the port in the box. If you were to put the port out in the middle, just like cut a hole out of the middle of the box, then it technically shares no sides. So then you would, make that number 0, and you can see it drastically changes the tuning by like over 2 hertz because now it's basically saying, okay, if I have a port right in the middle, I can't share the sides of the box, which means I have to create 4 sides of a port. If I create 4 sides of a port, I'm actually making more displacement in my box because that's more wood I have to put in the box to actually build a port. So these side ports are really the most efficient use of space, aside from arrow ports, because the arrow ports aren't going to use a lot of material because they're round and their thickness doesn't take up so much room. So you have to account for the actual pieces of wood. So let's draw this in so you guys get the better visual. So I'm going to draw the port, and I'm pretty sure it will end up being an L port. So I usually just draw an L, and I start with the first piece as the piece that heads back. And I made sure that this port width going across the outside, this 5.5 inches, is maintained throughout the L. So like this section will also be 5.5 inches. So that's why I set it back from the rear of the box. And we'll go ahead and make that a group. And I will drag this up. And I'm going to make it look like wood. Alright, so that's the beginning of our port. And that could work, but we know that we have to go to a certain depth, and I had that on here. It was 26 inches, which gets us to our desired tuning of 34 hertz. So we're going to get this thing to 32 inches. And what I like to do is, I know that since this is the L port, I have to turn this corner here. But if you measure this distance near this corner, if you guys might not know, but down here, if you see my cursor circling, that is a dimension that it's measuring out. So if I draw this line, it's going to tell me. Right now it's telling me that's 7 3/4 inches. So that port technically gets wider right here, and that's not what we want. So what I like to do is I put a 45 in the box so that the port kind of maintains a pretty consistent width and helps it kind of roll around this corner. So I draw my line into the corner at 5.5 inches long. And I have this fancy tool that lets me rotate things 90 degrees. And then that sets up my 45. So now I know where my 45 is, and I can continue drawing that as a real piece of wood. So I'm going to give it some more dimensions. Alright, so there's a 45 in our box, and I'm going to make it three-dimensional. Just drag it up here, clean it up. Alright, so now we have a 45 in our corner of our enclosure. So that's pretty sweet. So now I want to use what I have here and find out how much port length I actually have and how much I need to add on, because since I'm doing this L port, I know the box or the port is going to have to go some depth into the box this direction. So what I do is I'll measure a line down the center of the port, and that's how I determine my port length. And what I'll do is in this 45 is I'll perpendicular shoot some lines off, and then I'll draw this line into those. And then down here, I don't know how long this is going to be yet, but I'm going to draw a line and get myself started. And if we clean this up, we now have a path. You see this line in the center is a path of my port, and I'm going to consider that my port length. It's a, if you run down perfectly the middle, you have a pretty average length as you roll through this turn. Geometry gets complicated if you want to go in depth. That's something that you'll have to play with on your own, but generally if you go down the center line of the port, that is the preferred way to measure the port length, in my opinion, and it always turns out good that way. So let's start with this. Remember guys, looking at this area down here on the screen where my cursor circles, it'll show you the length so you guys can follow along. But I'm going to measure this first segment and I have a calculator that you guys can't see, so I'm going to do this on my end. But that number is 18 inches plus 1/8 inch. So there's that. And then I'm going to measure this little segment, and it's 2 1/4 inches. So between those two segments, my port is already going to be just over 20 inches long to this point. I know I need 26, so what I do is from here is I take on my calculator, I'll take 26 less the length I already have measured. It says I need 5.625 inches left to create my full length 26-inch port. So if you could draw that line, it finds it right here. And then I know my little L only needs to be this long. Alright. So if I clean this up a little bit for the visual. Alright, so this is my L port, and this line running down the center is now measured at 26 inches long. So now I know that I'm tuned pretty close to accurately, and that could be as far as you guys go into design and feel like it's okay. That's basically by trusting the software that it exactly calculated this thing correctly. But the nice feature of the software is that you can actually check volumes of things to verify. So what I always like to do is I like to verify what my leftover volume is inside this box. Just to kind of double check the software. Torres may have miscalculated. It may have not understood that this was an L port or something was a little off. So what I do is you can draw a line that kind of is the perimeter of the enclosure space on the inside. So you can see this highlighted area that's the volume that is of the enclosure, not of the port. And I like to know how big that is. So what I do is you can you can draw the outline. You'll have this kind of highlighted thing, and you can drag it up a little bit. And you have to do that. You have to drag it off the floor of the box, or else it won't understand what you're trying to do. But there's this little label tool here, and you can just click it, and it's going to tell you the square inches of the surface of this. And that's, you have to raise it off the floor a little bit, as you can see right there, because for some reason it doesn't understand that this piece is separate from this piece, and it'll like add in the area of this port, and you don't want to do that. You just want the area of the footprint of the inside of the enclosure. So it's telling me it's 664 square inches. So all I'm going to do is 664.4 times now the height of my enclosure on the inside. So that's from my floor up to the top, which is 17 inches. So you have to remember we're talking about the internal volume, so you want to stick with the internal dimensions. So if you times that by 17, you're going to get a pretty large number, and that's going to be cubic inches. You're going to want to convert cubic inches into cubic feet, because that's what we're talking about. So if you take your resulting number and divide it by 1728, you'll have a volume of 6.5 cubic foot. So this entire volume that you see here, not including anything the port is doing, is 6.5 cubic foot. So that seems like we're in pretty good shape. But remember, we have to subtract our subwoofers, because they're going to take a volume when they go in that box later on. And I remember we put down 0.6 as our enclosure displacement. So it's going to be 6.53 cubic feet. That's what I just calculated on the software. Subtracted by 0.6, 5.93. Wow, we were close. It's 5.92 on Torres. So I think Torres did a good job on this particular design of calculating it. I've had it in the past where you use the model and you calculate the volume with the model, and it turns out it was a little bit off from Torres, significantly enough that it would impact the tuning of the enclosure. And from there, what I do is I'll leave Torres alone, and I'll just pay attention to the volume, the goal of the volume, and the goal of the tuning and port length. And I'll just sit here with the model, and I'll adjust the walls of the box, or I'll change little things and remeasure my volume of the model to ensure that I am actually matching the volume that Torres spit out, because that's the only way you're going to get your tuning, is by matching this volume and matching this port length and tuning and stuff. So that's kind of how you use the software in tandem with each other. So now we have a nice enclosure, and we've just verified that our subwoofers are going to fit as far as volume goes, and we are tuned correctly. If you wanted to put a brace in here, that's going to take up volume, so then Torres actually gives you the ability to calculate braces. So if you knew you were putting a brace in, and say the brace took up 0.1 cubic foot, you can type that in for the bracing, and it's going to take that out. And now we see that your tuning's gone up a little bit because you've taken up displacement in the box, and your box volume has gone down, and your port area has gone up, and we're at 16. So like that brace might be okay to put in there, but I might not want it in there because I like the numbers here. It's kind of a lot of trial and error, and you'll play with it. I'll get some water here. Okay. So, but I'm going to leave this the way it is for this example to keep it simple. This won't be my final product for my Jeep, but it's helping get the point across and do some brainstorming. So we'll put the tops back on, and there we go. We have the enclosure. It's tuned, but now we have to place our speakers. So this will be the next thing I do. I basically, with this software, is I'll just draw a line that's the diameter of the inside of the speaker, so that's the mounting hole diameter, and the outside diameter. And you guys can look up specs on your subwoofer. Usually they'll be provided on the website, but they'll say mounting hole diameter, and for a 12 it's usually 11 inches, and then the outside diameter is 12.5. So as we all know, the speakers have like this flange on them where you put the screws. The cutout of the box is going to be a little smaller, and then the overall is going to be a little bigger, because that flange is going to be larger diameter. So I'll start by drawing one circle. So I'm going to make this line at 11 inches, and then I have a circle. So that's a 11-inch diameter circle, and then I'll have a 12.5-inch diameter circle over here, and then I just bring them together. And this to me represents my speaker. I'll make it a group. So this is my speaker, and I'm going to plop it on there, and I'm going to make two more because I'll have three speakers. And then this, sometimes you'll run into, you'll find out that you physically can't fit your speakers in the way that you have your port set up. So sometimes you have to scrap your design and start over, but I think I can make this work. So I'm going to start by sticking my speakers in a triangle shape. I think that's what I'll end up doing. You know, so they'll kind of go something like that, right? And you know, maybe you don't like the look of this, then you can change the port. Maybe the port can go across the bottom this time, and then you could center the speakers more so in the box overall. I mean, so many different ways to do that. And the more you play with it, the better you'll get. You know, so this is why I do these designs sometimes, because people don't want to think about this stuff, or they're not comfortable, and they'll leave it to me. And you know, I'm used to doing this stuff, so I usually figure out a pretty good solution. So I'm gonna just go with that layout. I didn't perfectly measure where they go, but just for the tutorial, we'll say that they're perfectly placed. So now I'm gonna edit my piece of wood on the top and actually transfer my layout down into it. And again, you're gonna have to learn how to play with the software to do this. And then I can get rid of my little speaker things. And there we go, we got our first set of cutouts. And then I can actually just copy that down. That's my double layer baffle. So boom. There we go. And now we have our holes cut out in the model, and it looks awesome. So this is our design right here. And we've already checked that everything works with Torres, so we know that our tuning is going to be at 34 Hertz. We have the appropriate amount of volume, and our port is doing what it's supposed to be. And that's essentially the design at that point. There's other things I'll end up doing usually, so we'll go a little more detail. But you know, this will get you going. Things I'd like to do is, because I'm funny, and this will take up volume. So in my example, I might not be able to get away with as much of these kind of cosmetic things, but you know, we'll have to keep account of the volumes that are being used and things. But I'm going to actually double this up right here on this L. That's what I like to do for most people's builds, because I like to put a nice round over on the end of these. Let's see. And sometimes the software doesn't know what you're trying to do, so you have to kind of help it out. But this is if you took your router and you put a round over on it. So there you go, you have a round over. And then I would do the same thing on this side. Right. I don't think I drew it right. Sometimes you have to help software, so you have to draw a line out and then it knows what to connect to. There. Alright, so I mean that would be the end of your port. It's a nice clean round over, that way, you know, air is getting around it nicely, and then maybe you'd put one on the inside of this to kind of clean it up. So I'll do one of those. And there you go. You got a nice kind of smooth flowing port going through there, and then maybe on the front you want to do a round over, or maybe you want to do like a 45. 45s are usually okay. Something like cosmetic or however you like your box to look. I like the look of these 45s cut in here. So then you could do that. You know, so there would be like your port opening, and now you can put your box back together, and you can call it a done design. And you know, then I would usually double check all my work, and then I would put together the plans for someone and send it off to them in a PDF. You can do this cool thing with like shadows and make it look nice for a cosmetic photo or something to send to someone or to look at. But there would be your box, and then you can look at the measurements and see how big it is by kind of measuring this stuff out, you know. So that would be your speaker enclosure, and we just designed that in probably an hour. I'm a little faster when I'm, you know, able to think and not have to speak. And it works out and it matches this. And I mean, people are going to be like, well, I want to see a graph, or how's this thing going to perform, or what? And that's a lot of the stuff that comes with experience. Honestly, I don't trust any of those softwares like Basebox Pro and all that to tell you a bandwidth. Like, it's not going to ever be accurate to the real world. A lot of this stuff is, for me, it's been trial and error for a lot of years, and just knowing like this is my goal in my head. I realize that a ported enclosure is not going to have crazy super bandwidth the same as a sixth order or maybe a fourth order. It's going to act different, but I understand that. I understand what I want. Like, I want it to be pretty loud. I don't need super duper crazy lows, for instance. So I'm not worried about tuning it into the dirt. I'll tune it at 34 hertz, and this thing will get down, and it will play probably safely down to like 25 to 28 hertz, depending on the vehicle or the subwoofer. Obviously, the subs that I'm using are the ones out of my old build, and they naturally play stupid low, and they love it. So if I tune this thing at 34 hertz, I know those subs are going to be happy, and they're going to carry down to 25 hertz pretty well, even in this box, and then be able to play significantly above that. Usually the rule of thumb to kind of gauge or guess what your bandwidth roughly should be of the box is it'll play pretty safely about a half octave to an octave lower than your tuning, and it'll play pretty safely an octave or even two above what you've tuned. And an octave, well, I guess you could say an octave is like halving this number. So like 34 divided by 2 would be, that dictates it plays down to 17 hertz, which is way lower than it would. So it's probably about a half octave is realistic. So 34 divided by, let's see, I guess that's 1.5. I'm trying to think of I'm trying to remember this rule because it seemed like it seemed pretty realistic, but I think just kind of based on what I know, I think this should definitely play down to about 25 hertz, considering my subs. And if it plays an octave above, that's going to be 34 or times 2. So this box should technically play up to 70 hertz, 68 hertz, based on that kind of general rule of thumb. But like I said, if it's the rule of thumb, I think, is a half octave below and a full octave above is kind of what you can expect as a total bandwidth, where it just finally rolls off really hard. That's kind of just a general thing. That's not really like a given. You're not going to always have that. It might be just something stupid I heard a long time ago, but it seems to hold true for the most part. I don't know. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is we have a design now that you could throw in your car and be good with, and we just did it together. So hopefully that was fun for you guys. I'll start going through your questions, and we'll put some more time into the video if you want to stick around. We got actually a different or a pretty good number of viewers, so that's pretty cool. So I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching. So let's look at the comments. So Maybe I could pull this over. So now you guys should be able to actually see what I'm seeing. But let's see. Let's start around here. Blah blah blah. People are just talking. Have you ever done a blow through? Yeah, I've done a blow through with that program. So that's actually something I could get into real quick. So if you want to, this is going to tell you anything about a ported enclosure. Um, but then you might wonder about bandpass. Well, bandpass gets really tricky if you're doing it this way, but that's kind of part of how I do it. But a fourth order essentially is a sealed enclosure coupled with a ported enclosure. So if you establish what your sealed closure volume will be, let's say it's 2 cubic foot, and you want to do it a 1 to 2 or 2 to 1 ratio fourth order, then you would basically just design a ported enclosure at 4 cubic feet, because that would be twice of 2. And you just design it in here, and you do your port the same way, but maybe for that blow through, your port, like I was saying earlier, is in kind of in the center of the box, kind of like this, so it's not sharing any sides with the box itself, right? So then you remember, okay, I'm not sharing any port walls, and I'm going to change my tuning because in a fourth order, I know that my front chamber is going to tune kind of high. Usually you're like 45 hertz or something. So then like my port area will change and my port length will change. So then you can just play around with it, and you end up getting some other sort of tuning and volume. And then another cool thing is Torres will let you say like, oh, I'm sticking 5 inches of my port on the outside of the box, and then the rest will be on the inside. So I'll tell it it's going to be 5 inches on the outside. So it'll actually like pull the port out. So like if you had a port going through your firewall, kind of like that, and then the rest was actually just coming into the box, it will know how to take that volume out. But the tricky part is when you're doing that, and then you're coupling chambers, you end up having to do a lot more checking of volumes, because that's when Torres will start having issues of like keeping good track of your volumes the more complex of a design you do. So a lot of this stuff is you got to do your own bookkeeping and keep track of your design, and purely think of Torres as a way to get you to the ballpark. And if you really want to fine tune stuff, you pay attention to the numbers it's putting out. Like if you want this thing at exactly 37 hertz, you need to figure out how to get your design to be exactly 6.45 cubic foot at this port area with that port length. And it'll all work out in the end, but it does take a lot of patience and going through it. So again, people will come to me and just have me do it because I can do that. I'm used to doing that. So I've been doing more designs lately because I've had time at home and been able to do that. But if you want to try this stuff on your own, then it's a lot of trial and error and practice. But definitely brush up on geometry and some basic math skills. If that's stuff that you don't do every day, it definitely those are good things to know. Just understand what volume is, understand what square inch area is, understand how geometry works. Like if I put a shape in a box, technically my box is smaller inside now because there's something taking up room in it. So you gotta be pretty familiar with those things and how that works in the real world, and then you can apply it to a design. And so I do that, and they usually come out pretty good. And I've seen other designers on Facebook and YouTube and stuff, and they do good work for the most part. I've gotten emails from you guys before from other designers and like asking me if I could look at the work and see if there's something I can improve. And I've seen some weird stuff that I don't think I would do, and I never like want to bash on other designers, but there's stuff that just I I don't understand that I've seen, and it seems like too that you guys would pay a bunch of money to someone and you don't get a very nice product out of it. Like they'll give you a cut sheet and like some dimensions and call it good, and they send you a couple of pictures. I'm not into that. I feel like giving you guys the full service is the best way, because not only do you need to know that your box is tuned right or if it's the right size or everything's going to actually fit, but you need to know how to build it, in my opinion. So that's why I do these step by step. I'll show you like, hey, this piece will go on next. It's got to have this cut in it. You probably want to do that cut before you put it on the box, blah, 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 blah. For every example, and you'll get the detailed specs. And that's what I like to include in my plans. Like, I'll even tell you where this brace goes. I'll tell you all kind of things about it. So you can kind of see that there's the next level of detail that I try to provide to people if they come to me for an enclosure design. And I didn't want to like turn this into an advertising thing, like, so you guys don't have to come to me for an enclosure design, but at least you know what you could expect and you kind of know my thought process. And I've never had a complaint. I can't say that I'm the best out there. I know there's guys that know a lot more than me about it, but I do have experience and I do try to apply that to everybody if they come to me. I'm not looking for a bunch of work right now either, so don't think like you need to come straight to me and demand a box enclosure. I've been raising my prices because I've been getting a lot of activity and I can't quite keep up with all of it because I still have a pretty active life even during this quarantine and everything. But if you guys are serious and you want to get something done, then there that is. You can go to my website. But anyway, let's check out the comments a little more because our numbers are dwindling down now for the live stream. But we had a pretty good hour here. What's up, everyone? So, how to calculate port area for fourth order in relation to subs cone area. I was looking for some formulas, not sure if I'm going right. So the way I always do port area is I kind of just stick an arbitrary value on a volume. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Was I like to have a box that's like 16 square inches of port area per cubic foot for a ported enclosure. If I'm doing a fourth order, I would up that to maybe 20 square inches to 22 square inches per cubic foot. Because that's how a fourth order is going to want more port area than a ported box because it's a different kind of enclosure. And that is the relationship between it and the ported portion of the enclosure. Like, you don't need to worry about your sealed side. That volume is on its own. You're just concerned about the volume of the ported side of a fourth order. And so the port area per cubic foot will be per how many cubic feet after displacement of your vented side in a fourth order. And I like around, between 18 to 22 square inches per cubic foot. If you're doing like an SPL build, you'll want more than that sometimes. So there's a lot of factors. I'm not huge into fourth orders. I don't really play with them that much, but I do have interest in them, and I would like to go back and have one. I used to have a fourth order, and I liked it. So yeah, you can design band passes on here. You just have to do a lot more tracking and footwork, with what you're doing on the numbers, because this software will not spit out a fourth order or sixth order for you. It just doesn't. It only knows how to do ported enclosures. So if you're doing band passes, you kind of have to treat it as a ported enclosure and then couple it with another enclosure on your own. But it's something for you guys to play with if you want to do that. So you guys like the box? Someone says amazing. So yeah, if you guys didn't catch this earlier, this is going to be for my Jeep. I am going back to just a regular, not wall setup. I have a lot of reasons. I can go over that in another video. I don't want to like bring people down or make them feel sad. I don't know if I'm moving on from doing that or if I just want to preserve my Jeep. But in the future, we'll be doing more builds on the channel, like big walls. I think the Jeep wants to retire for the most part, and there's going to be trust me, there's going to be a nice build video for the Jeep, and it's going to have a enclosure pretty much like this one. This is like my first iteration of a design, and I'll keep playing with it. So it should be fun for the channel for me to do a build in the Jeep that is more on the level of what you guys might be doing in your personal builds. Not everyone on my channel is building walls. Not everyone is doing not everyone's even doing 312s. I mean, there's guys with 112 on one little amp. I'm doing 312s on 15,000 watts, and I'm trying to convince myself that's a small build. I guess it's not, but hopefully it's more in line with what you guys would like to see as a learning experience for your own personal builds. So that's kind of where I'm going with the Jeep, and I want to restore the Jeep, and I want to have some fun with it again. I used to take it off road and do a lot of fun stuff like camping, and I think that's what I'm going to do with it. And we're gonna rebuild Craig's wall a little bit into a demo monster. So there's going to be a huge wall build coming on the channel, so don't worry. But again, I'll post an official video and we'll go over that. So back to your comments. So people are asking, okay, someone saw the website, that's cool. I think someone ordered a t-shirt while I was on here too, so I'm gonna have to hit up Craig. I don't know if Craig is still watching, but he ships out the t-shirts. So if you guys haven't gotten a t-shirt, go check them out. They're pretty cool, and it helps support the channel. Yeah, so it's good to see Fourth Horse playing lows. They do. Got okay, the third era. Oh, dude, appreciate the support, especially with the super chat. So go get your pizza, and we'll get your shirt shipped out to you. SPL Holic said, "What's up, Ray? Want to say hey? What's up?" So tuning is the same FS. What if the box tuning is the same as the FS of the subwoofer? It's like that's tough. You probably want to have your subwoofer broken in already, because then you'd have to measure FS again to make sure it's accurate, because what a manufacturer provides for FS spec isn't usually the broken in FS, especially like DC Audio. You'll notice like their FS is really high. So yeah, that's tough. I guess if you in theory, if you tune your box to the exact same frequency as your FS or your woofer, it should be pretty loud. It'll be peaky, and it'll kind of, I guess, I don't know if it'll act like a burp box, but I guess out like if you put it in the middle of your yard out in the open, it'd be the loudest it could possibly be, I would assume. As soon as you put it in the vehicle, then it kind of goes out the window, because now you have to deal with the vehicle's tuning, like its frequency response. And so the whole thing with like SPL builds is figuring out like how to get the box tuning, the subwoofer FS, and the vehicle's FS all to match. And that's pretty much the gist of what I've always tried to do with SPL setups. Again, when you do that, then you have no bandwidth. So I kind of treat the tuning and the FS and the vehicle response as like a bunch of components that add together into the overall bandwidth. So like if you have a vehicle that favors low end frequency, then you might tune the box a little bit higher, and then you have a subwoofer that's got an FS that's slightly higher, and then like maybe end up with a flat response. But the real world, nothing ever makes sense when you do it. So I don't know. I'm not the expert on that. But if you tune your box at the FS of the sub, then it usually is going to be pretty loud at that frequency, because everything's going to sync up. And there's some cool videos online, like people showing you. There's this dude in Australia, I forget his name. He's got a YouTube channel. He does. I think he's doing a lot of amp repairs now and stuff. You guys probably follow him. But he had a video showing kind of like subwoofer frequency versus port tuning, and like how those things interact with each other. And he used this scenario of like a weight on a string, and you swing it back and forth. And he was showing how his hand motions in relation to the string were kind of like the FS of the sub versus the port tuning, and you could get the little weight to swing back and forth at the same rate as your hand, or you could speed up your hand, and then like the weight is kind of like trying to trail behind your hand. He did all these really great examples, and it really well explains how that all works, you know. So you guys might know who I'm talking about. Yeah, Bear Vids. Guys, go look him up, and there's a video, and it's really, really way better explanation I could ever give you on how that stuff works. And port interacts with the subwoofer. So I want to keep going with the comments. So let's see. But yeah, thanks guys for chiming in on that. Your port height is wrong now. I know. I was playing with Torres for some other example. I don't know when I changed it. I think it's still right. I don't know. It doesn't matter because I finished this design and I was playing with Torres for some other questions. So I'm gonna keep going. Is this for your new enclosure? Yeah, I think we answered that. For the new build in the Jeep, I'm doing the JVF 12s for right now, and I'm pretty sure they're not gonna like the amount of power I have to throw at them. So we'll eventually do a level 5 DC. But I'll get rid of that. So yeah, some level 5s in here. Maybe put them inverted or something. We'll play with it. Something fun for the channel. We'll go over we can go over inverted subs versus non-inverted subs, but a good example of that right here on Torres calculator is, you notice I have the box volume or the subwoofer volume taken up out of the box, and we're tuned. If I fix this, I think that's what I just had. Yeah. So say my box is tuned at 34 hertz. Well, if I go ahead and invert my subs, I can take this volume out of the box, and now I'm tuned at 32.4 hertz. Right, so I effectively made my box bigger. The box is now 6.5 cubic foot, but now my port area is a little small, so it could potentially lose some bandwidth, or it could gain. It's hard to say until you tried it, but you could definitely say that the tuning has gone down, which means it could potentially play lower. So when people invert their subs, that's exactly what's happening. Is you've created volume in the box, therefore the box is now bigger and will play lower as long as nothing else has changed. So let's keep going with comments. These are probably older ones because I haven't looked for a while. But center port will use 2 walls top and bottom. Well, yeah, so yeah, you guys are catching on. So like this port uses 3 walls. If I had a port right in the middle of the box that was from the top to the bottom, then it would only use 2 because it's only using top and bottom. But like I said earlier, if it was like a blow-through style port, then it's using no sides because it's not sharing anything with the box. So that's that. But let's go back. Oh boy, let's see. Why don't you just raise the cubic inch tool up to 17 inches? Then all you'd have to do is divide the number by 1728. Well, it's because it's not a real cubic inch tool. I don't know. You guys are gonna have to play with this software, but like, I'm gonna draw. Let's say I want to know the volume of this little area right here. I just drew like a 2D face, and it doesn't understand that I'm trying to get the little bitty area of that. So I just drag it up, and then it can get the area of just that top face that isn't like this whole bottom of the box. So now it's like a small number, 24 inches. It can't tell me the volume of this square without me manually, calculating that based on that little number, because it's only getting the surface area of the top face of the square. It doesn't understand that this is a cube. The only way the software will understand it's a cube is if you drew a nice cube and you made it a group, then it will tell you up here the volume of that cube in cubic inches. So that's a way to do it. I guess I could do it that way, but that requires that I draw this out perfectly in here and I make it a group. So there's a couple of different ways to go about calculating the area and the volume of a box, right? So you guys will end up having to play with the software if you download it. And I can try to answer questions later on. If you guys wanted like a video dedicated to teaching the software just for our purposes of, designing boxes, then I could do another one of these live streams, because this has been kind of fun for me. And it looks like it's working. And we're getting down in viewers, but someone just sent $10. I appreciate it. SPL Holic. You deserve a shout out. That is really awesome. And You guys, I really appreciate the support for the channel after all these years, and hopefully you guys continue supporting even though now that I'm not walling the Jeep anymore. I don't know. I feel like it could be a better thing for you guys to watch because it's more relatable potentially, or maybe you guys love having big builds. But since Craig's doing a big build, then we should have the best of both worlds on the channel. And don't worry, I'll end up getting another vehicle in the future that we can do. But to give you, if you didn't see at the beginning of the live stream, to give you some hope for the world, the Astrovan is being rebuilt a little bit. We're cutting the baffle out, and you guys remember this is my, well, this is my design for the 418s. We are switching this thing out to 1212s, and it's going to be a demo build. So don't worry, guys. There's going to be a big demo wall build on the channel, and we'll be good. We'll be having video on that, and I think it'll be a lot more fun than chasing numbers. That was a tough thing. Like, my goal was breaking a 170, and we broke a 168, but we lost so much equipment, and it was so hard. And the hate online from the community of the DB drag people, and I don't want to compete that much anymore. Like, I like competing in music classes, and I like competing in Mecca and IASCA, but I do not like DB drag anymore, and I don't feel like talking about DB drag. If you guys participate in DB drag, do it for yourself. Don't do it for the title anymore. There's no point, in my opinion. So Craig and I decided we are switching to a demo build. We're going to put up whatever number it puts up. We hope it does a 165, but actually be musical instead of just a fart box, a burp box, you know, for chasing SPL. The concrete portion of the enclosure obviously is staying. We're not messing with that because that's what that is. But we're trying to make the Astrovan more of like the people's build, and we think that 1212s will be awesome, and we can start demoing it for everyone. We're gonna put some crazy door panels in it, and just have tons of mids and highs, and we'll have fun with the vehicle. We have a nice wrap on the van, and we really have fun with the van. But we're gonna do the people's build, I think, with that. So kind of panning back through these questions. Oh man, people in Jamaica. What's up, Jamaica? I hope you're still watching. Thank you for Ninsmo Sound. I butchered the name. I'm sorry, but you guys can see in the comments that must be your shop, and hopefully, this is a nice shout out for you guys. So if you guys are in Jamaica, there's a shop you can go to. Alright, so WinISD, do you enroll checking? No, I don't use WinISD. I played with it and I didn't really like it. Again, like Basebox Pro and all those softwares, I don't care what the software tells me what the bandwidth is going to be. You know, they give you the little output in the graph. They want to know all the sub specs. I don't care. At my point and where I'm at in car audio is I have enough background knowledge in my head of what things do. So when I set out and I design something on here, I usually think of the vehicle if I know the vehicle. If I don't, then it's kind of a shot in the dark sometimes. But I have a general idea. Like, I know this works in this vehicle. I know that this woofer prefers to do this, and I know how much power I'm going to be using. I'm going to design it based on what I think it's going to do and what my goal is for that design. I don't pay attention to what little graphs are going to tell me because none of that stuff ever works out in the real world. It'll totally change, and I don't mess with it. So anything that outputs the graph, I don't care. I mean, that's just where I'm at. So Master Wrong says, what's up? Looking at watching your channel for a while. Can you Photoshop in some 12s in the baffle for visual? Thanks. I could actually like Photoshop speakers into these models so you can see them, but it takes time, and so I never usually do. I just show the holes. I don't know. If someone like specially requested to see the speaker in there, I'd have to like charge you for some time because I'd have to actually like draw the speaker out. I don't know how hard it would be. I haven't really done that for a long time. I think there's a way to like you can paste images into the software and like you could have the face of the speaker, but I don't ever worry about it. But if you wanted for a visual, there you go. How much for Designs. So like I've been saying, I've been kind of raising my prices a little bit just because of the demand. But typically, $40 for ported designs, PayPal. Um, and I'll go through and like I showed you here, you get the full set of blueprints with the step by step. I feel like it's a good value for $40 because I put, a decent amount of time into these, and I've never had a complaint. I mean, it's pretty cool. And then you have a nice set of plans you can show off to your friends and be like, well, I know what my port area is, and it does this. And, I went to the competition today, and I know my box is this loud, and I know it's tuned right here, and I know everything about my box. You'd be able to say that to people, you know. So that's something I provide, and seems like 40 is a good value. I've had a lot of people tell me I need to charge more, and I don't know. I charge a lot more when it comes to doing bandpass enclosures, and I usually tell people I don't want to mess with bandpass enclosures because it takes so much more of my time, and I'm not. I'll send it off to someone like Baseaholics or whoever, and there's some good designers out there that do those a lot more. But so yeah, so we can do any design. You can email me at jeepandbase.com, or that's my website. You can email me at jeepandbase@gmail.com. That's my email. So hopefully you guys learned a few things. Looks like we got a few that said that they did. But yeah, we could do more SketchUp videos. But you know, I had some time today. I worked all day in the morning, like from 7 to 3 or so. So I got a full day in, and you know, I had some extra time. I was feeling pretty worn out after all that, and came in and rested, and then I jumped on the computer and decided, you know what, I would like to try to live stream because I know people would like to watch it. So that's what I did today. But yeah. Someone asked Slam this year if it isn't canceled. I have never attended Slam, and I think the only way that I'd ever go to Slam at this point is if I flew and just brought myself and my girlfriend or something. I don't see bringing a vehicle out there because Slam is in Indianapolis, I believe, and that's about 2,000 miles from my location because I'm out on the West Coast. So that's a disadvantage of being me on the West Coast is that there's a lot more going on in the east end of the country, and so yeah, that's part of that. What I was saying about the DB drag is, you know, we were like one of few people on the West Coast that was trying to get competitive, and we just get shit on all the time. They don't respect us out here, and I guess because we're a bunch of crybabies for the most part, we always complain about the rules and things with DB drag. And the East Coast guys, man, they run the show down there. You probably see them on Facebook. I don't know if you guys know who those guys are at Soundcheck Customs, but they're building they got the world record for the loudest no wall build right now. They bought the imported vehicle. They got access to a shop space and everything, and that's the way to win. That's how they win that, and I have a lot of respect. And I tried to take a stab at going for a championship a few times, and I've come in second place at World Finals a few times. And the last 5 years, things have really gotten louder, and these guys are putting more time, more money, and more everything. And out here, we don't have those kind of teams. We don't have those kind of resources because we're not as close to those companies that supply the products and everything. So we have a hard time. And then I think the mentality out here is different in the West Coast because I'm in California, and trust me, I do not like California, but it's how it is out here. We're more of like just we want to have a good time, we want to do our thing, and you know, we just don't build for world championships that way. We don't have the resources or the time or the skill, I guess, because all the knowledge is in those guys that have teams, and they bounce a lot of ideas off each other, and they have the abilities. But so I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. I'm just saying that we're going to a demo build in the van. But we'll look at some of the last comments. Looks like why are we changing the Astro? I guess I answered that. we're done doing SPL chasing. Um, it it could have been fun, but uh, the sportsmanship isn't there anymore. This We had a bad time at finals, so World Finals with the van. We lost 3 subs, and it put up a 165. And the class was a 170 plus class. So if you're not doing 170 decibels, then they don't care about you. And because we lost 3 subs and only put up that score, we got so much criticism from people. And I don't know why. We never called anyone out. We never said we were trying to beat anybody. We were just trying to reach a personal goal of 170 decibels with the 4 subwoofers. So this is like the baffle from that. And we had bad luck at finals. We had a lot of bad luck that whole week, and just trying to get the van there and getting it set up. Um, and then they just shit on us. They didn't even say good try. They were just like, haha, you guys are losers, and they keep rubbing it in. And I said, I don't play that. I don't get into stuff like that. I I don't care anymore about trying to win against people that aren't worthy of even competing themselves. So we are going to have fun with the van, and let's see if I can find. Do we have any good photos of the van? 'Cause you guys have seen the van, I'm sure, but I don't even know where I would keep any of that stuff. But you guys know what the van looks like. Gosh, I don't know where I have photos of the van. So this is like where I keep all my videos that I work on for you guys. I don't think I have any van stuff in here anymore. Oh, here's the van. Come on, look at that thing. Isn't that thing sweet? That thing is really cool. I love that wrap. It's a lot of fun. So instead of having this thing be a SPL build that we just chase numbers and just don't have any fun because we can't demo it and we're competing against people who aren't, real sports. It's no fun. So we're gonna be doing a demo build. I don't care what anyone says anymore. They're not worthy of our time. So we are building this for fun. So that's the back of the van. So we got a setup in there. I mean, it's the real deal. Craig and I have put a lot of work into this thing, and it's got to be rewarding when you build something like that. I mean, we build all these things to make ourselves happy, and we just weren't happy chasing numbers and trying to do the competition purely just to get in the league of a bunch of people who will never show the right respect. I don't know. We are crybabies out here though in California, the West Coast area. I'm talking in Colorado competition world. We are crybabies for the most part because we know we can't beat them and blah blah blah. So maybe I'm among that, but I don't feel there's value in competing against that. And don't get me wrong, I still go to competitions and I still like competing locally and doing that. But aspiring to be on the world championship course, I don't know. It takes a lot out of you, and I'd rather have a demo vehicle, and I think Craig wants one too. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this thing to 1212s, and we're going to blow the windshield out every single time there's a competition or show just to have fun, and everyone's going to love it, and it's going to be great, and you guys are going to get to see demo videos, and it's going to be fun. I mean, this is a nice rig. We got the wrap done, and it's going to be fun. We got 2 of the Neo 18 sold, and we got 2 more. They're blown, but they're the Neo 18. So if you guys are interested in 2 subwoofers, we got 2 more, and I think we even are selling 2 of our blown 10Ks. That was like the other thing is we kept blowing up equipment. We have 2 bad 10Ks and we have 2 bad subs right now, and it's time to do something different. We'll stop blowing stuff up. So let me text my girlfriend real quick because she's been trying to call me. Okay, she knows we're doing live right now. I tell her to go watch the channel. if he never watches our videos. So anyway, I think we're running out of questions, and we're running lower on our viewership. We were almost up to 50 viewers, so that was cool. So it's not bad. We'll have to do more of these. Now they got it figured out. Oh, let's see. Yeah, so you guys know about Dang's 1212s. 1212s are going to be fun. We want to build that thing into a choke monster. So the 1212s is going to like still peak at reasonably high frequency, like 45 hertz or 40 hertz, somewhere in there. So we just want to choke everyone out. There's not any real good choke builds out here in the West Coast. I've sat in a few that have come from other areas where they just kill you. Like you get in there and it makes your nose bleed. Those are rare out here for some reason, and it's a lot of everyone wants to play lows. I'm like, man, I want some of them. I want to knock my wind out too, to where I can't breathe. And we actually did demo the 418s a little bit in Vegas. We had a good day with them, and then we I don't know why we just couldn't blow them up, and we just kept playing it for people, and that was a lot of fun. And we realized that that's a lot more fun than rolling up in the lane for 5 minutes and making a noise and then being done for the day. Oh, I got a trophy. Well, I mean, you could still get a trophy and have a lot more fun. So that's what we're gonna do. It's gonna be awesome. So I guess I keep going and repeating myself. I do that a lot. I keep talking about the same things, but I'm just trying to get your questions out. Yeah. So yeah. So no sportsmanship. Yep. That's where it's at. I used to, when I was young, when I started the competitions, I used to be kind of a braggart. And I would say stuff and I would challenge people and I would win a lot because I was into this and I would get, I could get trophies. And anymore, I've grown up a little bit and I've realized that, that's not what that's about. Winning's great, but you gotta you gotta be happy for other people winning too, and you gotta be happy for people reaching their goals and having some sorts of success, even if it's not, getting first place. You can't just go out and be like, well, you had a bad day, so you're a loser, so I have no respect for you. You can't say that to people. That's not how this works. If you have a competitor that you've gone against and you won that day, well, you had a good day, and maybe you did. You're the better competitor, but the real sportsman will let the other guy know, hey, you had a good run, and I see potential in your build, and you'll get me next time potentially, and if you need help, I got it. And I've been against guys in the lanes. I had grudge match with this dude, and he had a bigger system than me. He had 615s and like 2 or 3 10Ks, and I had my 612s, and man, the dude beat me, and he, I was like, all right, dude, good job today. Shook his hand several times and went home, and then he came at another show and wanted to do a grudge match again, and at that time I had figured out some more of my build, and I was, it was on a good night, and we put money down on it, and I beat him, and he got real mad, and then wanted to go again, so we went again, and I beat him, and then wanted to go again, and he started kind of, acting immature about it, and it wasn't fun anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'm beating him, but the dude's not being a sportsman. You know, I remember losing to him and not acting like that. It doesn't have to be like that. So that was kind of messed up. That was one example of just like, you know, where's the sportsmanship? You got to have that. I don't know. But that's another reason why I think I'm kind of downgrading the Jeep, because the winning thing is great, and the Jeep won a lot of stuff at a lot of shows, but it creates enemies that I don't need. I'm not into having the enemies anymore. Like, I just want to have fun, and I want to be able to hop in my Jeep and go to a show and hang out and have a good time and not have to worry about, well, who's louder today and who's doing what. I don't know. I'm in a weird place in this whole cardio world, I guess, but I've gone full circle, I feel like, through the last maybe 10 years of being involved. But let's get back to a question or two. So someone asked about what caps are in the van. These are the Maxwell 2.7 volt. They're in banks of 6, so we're basically on a 12 volt system. If I had to go back and like redo this, I would be on a 16 volt system, and we wouldn't be using the 10Ks. The DC 10K is designed for 12 volt systems, and it won't work on 16 volt. The DC 9K will. So I think we would have done that. We would have been able to get more power out of this, but we did pretty good, and we're gonna just continue using this equipment in the demo build because we're not gonna need 80,000 watts, no matter what. So we'll be able to just run these amps at really efficiently and not have to worry about, getting every ounce of power out of them. So yeah, this is basically a 12 volt system. So what's the next question? Try def bounce. Bounce. Someone was saying bounce. Def bounce. It's def bounce. I think it was EXO or something. But anyway, I am sticking with my brands. I'm a loyalist when it comes to brands. I'm totally for Sky High Cardio. I'm totally for DC Audio. I'm totally for JVF Customs. I'm totally for AD Designs. I'm pretty much. I don't move outside of my realm into different brands a lot. Unless someone really came up to me and offered me, some sort of sponsoring or whatever. That might be something that would sway me, but for the most part, I've had like BT Audio approach me. I've had some others, and they all have really great product and everything. But I have reasons to be with the brands I'm with because number one, West Coast, we don't have a lot of the big brands out here other than DC and Sky High. So product availability is best. And then I know the owners, and they know me, and we talk. I talked to John at Sky High. I sold him a lithium battery, and he bought it so he could. I guess I don't know what he does with that. Maybe he uses it because I know he's a part of Limitless Lithium. And then I talked to Rusty, and I talked to all those guys at DC Audio, and I just have a good relationship with those guys. And so that's why I stick with those brands. And when people recommend other brands to me, then it's like, well, I don't have those relationships, and I don't know if I can depend on them when I need a product, or if I need a repair or whatever. So it's to me that's a big part of picking a brand is having that. Okay, so but if you guys know Shane with the blue and black Jeep and the 3 DC-18s, he is looking at the Def Bounce or Def Bounce speakers, like the Arnold or whatever series. I don't know what they all are. But he's gonna like redo all his mids and highs to that, I think. So he's open to trying those. So yeah, that's my gist on like brands, but you guys can do what you want. But I will say that brand is doing some things because they have some loud stuff. But what kind of 12-inch subs? I think for the Astro we're gonna do the XLs, the DC XL 12s. Those are nice middle of the road, 2,000 watt RMS per. If you got 12 of them, there's about 20,000 watts RMS, and then obviously we'll overpower them a little bit, but we'll keep the knobs down a little bit until we need to, and should be fun. So it should be a nice loud woofer to put in that wall. Let me fast forward. I want to get back to some of the other comments, but we got a super chat from Matt, and I appreciate it. He asks, what are your thoughts on lithium and supercapacitors? Lithium is awesome, and I technically haven't had the chance to really use lithium yet. I bought a bunch of Limitless batteries and then changed my mind on the Jeep build, and I sold most of them off, but I kept one that I'm going to use for my 312 setup upcoming, and that'll be my first real experience with lithium. But from what everyone's doing, it is the way of the future. It does way less. You can do a lot more than with the AGM. I've always used AGM and trusted it. But lithium to me is a little scary because I don't know enough about it, and I know there's so many different sorts of lithium and all this different stuff. So I'm learning on lithium, so I can't be the best person to ask about that, but um, definitely is going to be where I'm moving finally. And then as far as supercapacitors go, that's basically all I'll ever use for competition. I may start thinking about pairing lithium with supercaps, but the supercaps are unique because the way they discharge energy so fast. They don't really hold a lot of energy like a battery would, but what they do hold, they can get out quick. And when it comes to competition and you're just burping a vehicle, you definitely want that power as fast as it can get to those amps. And that's the whole idea of caps. Um, and they also act like a. If you have these style of capacitors, not like the cheap ones, they're a really good buffer for AGM batteries or for lithium. So they're nice to pair with those type of batteries because they're going to help deliver power quickly and kind of ease the load on that battery. I mean, there's tons of things you can do with them. I mean, capacitors are used, in your AC at your house. Your big AC unit outside has a capacitor in it because when your AC turns on, it creates a big surge. It puts a large load on the electrical going, out to that AC, and so they'll put a capacitor in it because the capacitor will kind of help soften that load. And that's the same thing that these do in car audio is they'll soften the load on the rest of the electrical system, and allow you to have a lot of power at once, a lot of amperage. So putting them together is good. If you have the more the merrier of both. I will say though that capacitors you have to have a lot of them to make them really do anything. So if you put one bank in a build, then it may or may not really help you out. But you get a couple banks, you can start moving some power around, then you're in good shape. We have 40 banks in the Astro van, so that gives you a sense of how many we needed. But yeah, so okay, you followed up with you were thinking about when you combine. Yeah, you definitely should combine as long as you have a good amount of caps. You know, they say that a bank of capacitors is good for around 1,000 watts continuous, like musical. As long as they're backed up by a sufficient amount of batteries. And I found that to be true. I did that in a few builds, and they definitely help. But if you have a lot of lithium, then you may not ever need the capacitors. I mean, it's really going to be if you're really trying to get that extra little squeeze out of the system. And I think 9 out of 10 people are never going to actually need, or even notice the difference. So, yeah. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't think I want to use capacitors in any of my music builds, but I have before. So that's that. What are the caps in there though? Oh no, these are Maxwell super caps. So that brand has been used for, more of industrial stuff. And we use them for 12-volt application. But yeah, these are the Maxwell super caps in the Astro. So 200 amp hour lithium with 2100 farads of capacitors. Well, I guess if it's 2100 farads, like after you've built the bank, I don't know what kind of capacitors you're going to be using, but you'll notice that these caps are 3000 farads each, like the actual cell. But as soon as you put them into a bank of 6, then like you have to divide it by the number of caps you have in series. So you'll end up with a 500 farad bank, which sucks because you have a 3000 farad little cell, but once you get the voltage up, you lose based on wiring it in series. But if you had a total sum of 2100 farads after you've already done all your wiring down, so I guess that's roughly 4 banks of caps if you're doing 6 caps, like these Maxwells in the picture. Yeah, so after the bank is built, then technically the caps are probably good for 4,000 watts by themselves, like as long as you had charging and all that behind them. And then 200 amp hours of lithium is insane. That's probably, I don't know, like 30,000 watts worth of capacity. And then you add some lithium or some caps on top of that. That should be a very solid setup. Um, but I almost would just say forget the caps. I don't know. I've had people hit and miss with caps, so I would say if I were just building something right now, I would just go with the 200 amp hours and let it rip. I don't know if I would do the caps personally. I don't think there's a huge advantage in having them. Um, but I mean, if you had the money and you wanted to give it a try, then you can't hurt yourself. That's for sure. Um, best competition. Okay, your best competition and the only one that counts is yourself. Beating someone else in lanes is just a bonus. That's definitely true words, and I'll tell you what, that it's become more and more true as time goes on. So at least from learning about how things work in the world, because at the end of the day, it's a one-man dance. Sometimes good motivate to prove. Yeah, I mean, there's that aspect too, and that's how I've been for years. Was having that good competition was what drove me. But I don't know, when you start losing that sportsmanship and they don't ever respect anyone the way they act out there, then I don't know. It's not worth having that competition to me. It's like playing into like a broken system. Like why do I want to be a part of that if it's not any fun? I don't know. It's weird. If you guys do competitions, make it about yourselves. Don't make it about beating anyone else. If you happen to beat someone, then that's icing on the cake, just like SPL Holic said. All right, man. Thanks, Matt, for the donation and the super chat. That will be put into the Jeep, I'm sure, so we can get that thing together and get you guys some video. So, all right, a couple last questions, and I'm gonna try to get this thing done because we're at 2 hours and my voice is going. But yeah, Brace thrashed and left because the people. And I used to watch his channel too, and I didn't know that's why he left. But there's been times where I've been like, I'm willing to walk away from Jeep and Bass and just I don't care. But there's people on here still that make it worth it to me, like you guys watching right now and asking questions. And at this point, I like sharing what I know, and I like having that feedback and just kind of showing you guys what I'm up to. And if people don't like it, then it doesn't matter. But the social media world has gotten pretty crazy, and so I've been stepping away from Facebook more and more because that's where a lot of the craziness goes down. Just people don't know what the heck they're up to, and they try to tell you, and it's like, man, I've already been around. I've already done it. I've been around, and I know what works for me. And if you're gonna try to tell me, what I should be doing and blah blah blah, it doesn't matter. I don't need to hear it. It doesn't mean I can't learn stuff, but it's like maybe you should just tell that to yourself and go figure it out instead of like getting online and just like getting angry with people over your opinions. Like your opinions are great, but everyone's got an opinion, and I just do what works for me. So that's why the social media just has been rubbing me wrong. But you guys make it worthwhile, so it's appreciated. So one guy says he's peaking at 17 hertz, doing mid 40. Dang. What do you think would be more impressive to do this or tune higher and hit 150 for demos in high school on a tight budget? Well, I would answer that. It would be a personal preference. I think for me, I would tune higher and try to be louder because most music is going to be not at 17 hertz. But if you're demoing for people who understand that 17 hertz, is awesome, and it's like they, they're not looking to hear like some song they know on the radio, then, and if that's what you personally like doing, then you could leave it where you're at. Um, but that's actually impressive. So I don't know. I might leave that one alone. 17 hertz at mid 140s, it's not a bad setup. But I'm sure it can play regular music. But you might get more some more impressive stuff tuning higher. But I mean, I don't know enough about your build. So that's a question from Jake. But I don't know if he's still watching. Let's see. Someone's talking about some stuff in the lanes. Lanes is leaving the volume low while on pause and sitting long enough. Waiting, forgot to have volume low. Like, why did I do it only for 39? What I do a lot is I'll be in the lanes and I'll have it full blast and I'll hit pause for some reason, or I'll shut the vehicle off and it's been on pause, and then something will happen. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get in my Jeep again and move it, and I'll turn it on. And when you turn it on, it'll be not paused anymore if you have like a Pioneer head unit, but the volume will be like full blast. So I'll be like backing up out of the lanes, and all of a sudden the thing's going full on, full bore out of nowhere, and it makes me jump, and I'm like, what the heck? And I realized I hadn't turned down the volume, but it had been on pause the last time I had the vehicle running. So that's what I do a lot in the lanes. It's kind of funny, but yeah, I appreciate you guys. So let's see if we get a couple more. Do it for love of the game. Yep. Doing 512 at Nissan Frontier. Blow through. Hell yeah, that sounds cool. 512. 512s or a level 512? You and EXO are my favorite. That's really cool to hear. I appreciate that. I am not anywhere near what EXO is, as far as like following and all that. And I don't upload that much, but um, you know, I'm friends with EXO on Facebook, and I've talked to him a few times, and he's a really awesome guy. I've personally talked to him, and that it was really cool, and I was having like a fanboy moment, but he was treating me like an equal, and he asked me questions, and he really liked my input, and it wasn't even questions about car audio. It was questions about social media, and because we're both kind of influences on YouTube and Facebook, and him way more than me, but he did ask for my perspective, and I told him, it's all about you doing you, and so hopefully, it cheered him up. It was about a year ago, but yeah, he's a really good guy, and I grew up watching him, so it was really humbling. So EXO's the guy, but Razan, yeah, Jose, he disappeared. You guys remember Razan? Like, I think it was 35 or something on YouTube. He had like the Talon with the 218s, and then he got the Tahoe. And I haven't seen him for about 2 years. And he moved, and I think a few months ago he kind of poked up on Facebook, because I'm friends with him on Facebook too. And he had mentioned something about starting his Tahoe build again. I don't know if you guys ever have seen that, but I think I have a video on my channel. I think it's 618s or something like that. And yeah, I don't know. He's dipped out too. I don't know if he's ever going to really come back or not, but every once in a while I'll see stuff from him. But he's a good guy too. And yeah, Rezone 35. Drop the bass. But you guys know these people. But yeah, I mean, and shoot, who else do I know? I know a lot of people that I've never actually met in person, but I've talked to online. And it's weird because these are all guys I grew up looking up to, and then I'm sure you guys look up to too. And now I've like interacted with them, and it's pretty humbling to think. But I actually know Steve Mead pretty well. I go to a shop and stuff every once in a while, and he's always hooked us up with stuff. So he's a really cool guy in person. I don't know what your guys' opinion of him are, but I know online he seems different than he is in person sometimes. But Steve Mead's cool. Who else have I met? I met a bunch of people. I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter that much, but it's kind of cool, fellow YouTube community. And my channel's still relatively small, so I still look up to those guys. But yeah. Doug who? Doug. Oh, Doug Menards. I've never met him, but I know people who have met him. I'm not gonna say anything about him, but I do like his channel. But yeah, I haven't met him in person. He's in SoCal, and he doesn't go to events or anything, so I never had the opportunity. But I've heard that, like, I'm not gonna go into it. He's a cool guy, so like his channel. But no, I've never met him in person. Anton Miller. I don't think I've ever met him, or I don't actually know who that is. Anton Miller. I might have to look that one up. I was just thinking of someone. Oh, I don't know. Do you guys watch Jacob Viral? Because I didn't know about his channel until maybe a year ago, and I remember seeing him at like 5K subscribers and or wherever he was. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I saw how much he uploaded and how well he covers, people's builds and looks and stuff. And I went back a few days ago because I saw his videos pop up, and man, the dude's got over 55,000 subscribers, and it's maybe been a year since I've seen his channel. The dude gets work in. I I am impressed by that guy, and I would like to talk to him sometime. I've never even thought to reach out. I don't know if he ever saw my channel or anything, but that dude puts in a lot of work. And I didn't think of him until the other day because someone brought up on my channel because I was teasing you guys in the last video about what I was doing with my build, and someone said I think he's pulling a Jacob on us, and I couldn't like figure out what that meant. I'm like, what's it pulling a Jacob? And then I realized it was Jacob Viral because he had just pulled his wall out and like he's back to like a single sub now. I thought that was kind of funny, and I said, well, yes, but hopefully better than that. Off 3 subs and some power. But no, I'll give him a shout out because I've seen the work he puts in, and it's work that I'm unable to do because I would think my channel could be at 50,000 subscribers by now if I had, put that time in. But I don't know. So 32 people are watching, but they're just listening to me go on. So I appreciate you guys listening, but I think I'm gonna wrap this up pretty soon. I'm getting tired, and go eat. But yeah, so I am pulling a Jacob. That's right. But hopefully we'll do a little bit bigger than that, and we'll have some fun with it. But yeah, so appreciate you guys. We're gonna call this one done. I don't think you would need to see anything else tonight. I don't know. I showed you a enclosure design and made this a 2-hour video, so really awesome. But all right, then I think we're gonna end this thing and let you guys enjoy your night. We're at about 8:30, so it's probably a good time to shut her down. But we like old school stereo. You guys are gonna keep me going. I'll wrap up with this. I've not talked to him. Maybe I've talked to him before, but I've never met him. But Bobby Gately and I kind of said, well, mostly Bobby. I helped a little bit, but that box you guys know about, the acrylic box on his channel, I actually tangibly had that in my hands and worked with it a little bit before we sent it off to him. I don't know if you guys seen that or no. Maybe I'm thinking of Big D Wiz. I think I'm thinking of Big D Wiz. I'm sorry, guys. Old School Stereo is the other guy. I think he's got like a trunk build, doesn't he? Never talked to him, but Big D Wiz is the guy that got the acrylic box that I'm talking about. So, yeah, so it's a small world. It's funny. But, anyway, okay, yeah, you guys are probably later than me. It's 8:30 on the West Coast, but alright, I'll finally call it done. You guys always get me thinking about stuff, and it reminds me how much I enjoy car audio. But yeah. Anyway, all right, guys, it's 8:30 on my end, and it's probably later for you, so I'm gonna let it be done. But we'll check back in and get some videos soon. So, all right, guys, next time.